So the good practice that I want to introduce today is the good practice cycling streets. Here, just some general info. So in our matrix from EUCycle, it fits into the infrastructure urban cycling matrix. And as I said before, the title is Cycling Streets, and it's actually from here, so from the city of Kleve. I mean, most of you probably know already the scope of our operational area, but for those who don't, I just wanted to show you the operational area of our policy instrument that we are bringing into EUCycle. It's the Interreg Germany-Netherlands cross-border program, and this is the operational area. It's a bit difficult because the border, the Dutch-German border, is not really properly put in here, but yeah, it goes around here. So if you follow, yeah, and this is where we as the Euregio are located, but also where the good practice that I'm showing you today is coming from. So cycling streets are marked streets that encourage the support of bicycles and by improving cycling infrastructure. So it's actually cyclists on these streets are the privileged road users, and because of that, this contributes to increased use of bicycles and also encourages the change from other means of transport to the bicycle because it's more attractive to use the bicycle, and it creates more safety. A cycling street is actually suitable for streets in which cycling traffic is predominant mode of transport, but also where the city wants to make cycling the predominant mode of transport. Here, I just wanted to show you the signposting. So these signs actually mark a street as a cycling street. And here on the right, you can see the end of a cycling street. So it's actually a normal street signposting that indicates cycling streets. So in comparison, what is different on a cycling street in comparison to a regular street? So on a regular street, as in the cycling street, motorized traffic is allowed, also on cycling streets. All parking spaces remain unchanged, and you don't really need a constructional design like in a cycling path because you already have the signposting. So you just put the signpost and you don't have to construct any kind of barriers on the street for a cycling street. The rule right before left for who goes first still applies, and also footpaths, they are still reserved for pedestrians. As in all traffic, the principle of mutual consideration of all road users is also unchanged, of course. And also if there's a one-way street, this remains unchanged, but cyclists can also go in both directions. But that's also the case for other streets. What is special for cycling streets is that cyclists can ride on the street next to each other, which they probably shouldn't on usual streets. And cyclists with a speed of up to 25 kilometers may not be overtaken. So not even with a distance from cars with 1.5 meters, cyclists cannot be overtaken. And to also increase safety, cars can only ride at a moderate speed, like 30 kilometers per hour. So what do you need actually to introduce a cycling street? So maybe at the beginning, you will need to identify which street in your region or your city could be a cycling street, or for which streets in your region or city would it make sense to actually introduce a cycling street. So you might have a study, like a feasibility study in your region. Also, if you want to indicate a street as a cycling street, you will probably have to produce some kind of signposting that will also rise costs probably. But in total, it's a bit difficult to estimate because it probably differs for every region how much it actually costs. Like, do you need a study to identify cycling streets? How much signposting do you need? So yeah, it's a bit difficult to estimate the real cost. So what are the evidence of success? So why is it as a good practice? So the number of accidents on the streets that have been converted into cycling streets have decreased, and also greater safety for cyclists has been achieved because, as I said before, the cars cannot overtake the cyclists. They have to ride at a moderate speed. So this creates safety. And maybe, the city of Kleve became more attractive for cycling since the introduction of these streets, according to the bicycle climate test. This is a survey carried out by the German Cyclist Federation. Here you see the development of ranks, but also I have to say it's a bit questionable how much these numbers are actually valid, because in 2018, due to an increase of population, Kleve moved to another testing category. And also because in this survey, not always the same amount of number of cities participate. So yeah, you could question the validity of these numbers a bit, but maybe it shows a bit of a trend of the development of how attractive cycling is in the city. The difficulties encountered were that if you introduce these cycling streets, many road users probably don't really know what they're supposed to do or what's allowed on these cycling streets, because it's a relatively rare and new posting. So at the beginning, people don't really know what they can or cannot do on these cycling streets. But to overcome this, the city of Kleve has published a short and easy to read information leaflet, so everyone knows what they can or cannot do on cycling streets and what the benefit could be of cycling streets. And they also put the information available on on the website, but you have to make sure that everyone gets the information, because otherwise a cycling street is just a normal street if people don't really know what they can or cannot do. Okay, where I see potential for learning or transfer is that the practice is not connected to a too high amount of cost. So maybe you already have a study in your region on cycling infrastructure. So there might even be synergies with these kind of studies. And it's relatively easy to implement. So if you know which kind of streets could be suitable as a cycling street, you actually only need signposting and the communication to people. And then it's already a measure that can improve cycling infrastructure in your city or region. And in overall, it can make cycling in the city more attractive, increase the modal share of bikes, because maybe more people use the bikes when they know it's safer, when they know there are streets where they can ride next to each other if you ride with a colleague or something. And of course, it increases the safety for cyclists, which is always a good reason, I think. That's it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sina. Now this is the time for questions.
Wait.
Do you know how many cycling streets are there in your region?
I don't really know the exact number, but in the city of Kleve, there are only in the city itself. I don't know the exact number, but it's a few. So I just see it from when I cycle myself. You see quite a lot of signposting with the cycling streets. I mean, you see a lot of signposting in Germany anyways, but also with the cycling streets.
Yeah, I also have a question about this actually, whether it's a network of cycling streets that are connected somehow, or it's rather streets which were bottlenecks in the cycling mobility within the city because of cars and bicycles riding the same itineraries or directions, and a lot of accidents happen. So because these are, I think, two different approaches to have a comprehensive territory, cycling friendly, or just clean up the most dangerous sections with this tool. Which one is the what you used?
I think, to be honest, it's a bit of both. A lot of these cycling streets are actually quite narrow streets, so where it would be actually extra dangerous for cars to overtake bikes. But also the cycling streets are connected. Not all of them, and I'm not really sure if you can actually make your way only on cycling streets, because sometimes it's actually also main streets that are kind of like crossing the cycling streets, or coming in the way of cycling streets, so you can't really make that. But there are routes that are connected with cycling streets. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
I also have a question. Were there any resistance from the side of the local people in the initial phase?
No, I don't think it was really resistance. I think what I said before, that people just at the beginning weren't really familiar with the concept. So if there was a signposting, they didn't really know what that was. So the city of Kleve really had to, as I said, publish this one pager with all the instructions. Okay, this is what these are the rules on a cycling street for cyclists. These are the rules for cycling streets for cars. Just like have a proper communication on what the rules actually are. Because as I said before, if no one knows what the rules are on these cycling streets, it might as well be a normal street. So I think this is one of the key things, that you actually communicate properly to make sure everyone understands the concept and what it's intended for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
I have one question, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I want to know if it's possible to see those streets, those signs in Google Street View.
Oh,
Either.
that's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
I am not sure, but if you want, I can check and tell you later. Like, yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure, but why do you ask? I mean, why do you think what's the benefit of these?
Benefit for me is that I can see those signs, see those streets, sitting here in Białystok and look out for them, yeah?
Oh yeah, true. Okay, I will check and I can tell you later on the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have one question too. Is street marking, signs are introduced by national regulations, or is it a strictly local solution introduced by the city?
No, I think the signs are actually nationwide. So there are also other cities that use the same sign posting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One question from my side. We in Brussels have a couple of cycle streets as well, but it has not been really successful in the beginning. Of course, riders tended to ignore the rules, or they didn't know about the rules. So I was wondering, is there any enforcement by police forces?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't know if it's I think it's also a lot of the Ordnungsamt. I don't know how to translate it properly, so it's not really the police, but it's by the city. That also give you the tickets if you were parking wrongly, for example. Yeah, but I think it's with all the rules on the street. If no one really checks, then and they can't be there all the time. So yeah, generally I think someone checks. I mean, yeah.
I would have a question, probably not for now. But since we have to document these good practices and we will publish it on the program website, I think part of this, and a very important part of this tool is the study itself that you mentioned, what has been prepared before selecting the streets, and what kind of factors did you consider, like traffic, number of accidents, other modes within the city. You know, there can be several options for that. In the Hungarian good practices, it's also a topic how to design a cycling friendly road network within a city. I think it would be very interesting to have an outline, at least an outline description of the study. What were the main factors to consider?
So in 2011, the city of Kleve wanted to introduce a whole new cycling concept. So this did not only include the cycling streets, but basically for the whole city, different measures on a new traffic concept, especially also focusing on cycling. So it was actually a massive study that not only checked the cycling street potential, but many other things. So I did not have the chance to look in that study in detail because it's just not available to me. However, I know that for the cycling streets, they checked, okay, so is this a street that is mainly used by cyclists already? And if not, is this a street in which it would make sense to make it more attractive for cyclists? For example, would that make them avoid main streets, for example? So are these ways in which they could avoid the main streets and the more dangerous traffic, let's say? Then it was also, I think, the number of accidents as well. And for example, considering the width of the street. So as I said before, it's also often a very narrow street in which it was extra dangerous for cars to overtake cyclists, for example. So yeah, I think it was definitely traffic, it was definitely accidents, and also alternative routes to the more dangerous streets. I think these were some of the most important factors.
I see, thanks.